Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dave Croft, and welcome to the 52 Qs podcast, your weekly insight into all things production and library music. Whether you are just starting out, or maybe you're a seasoned professional, I guarantee you are in the right place. Like I said, my name is Dave Croft, and it is so good to be with you today. We are live with our friends across the world. It is so good to be with you for a very special live Q&A episode, and we are recording this. It's going to be great. Really looking forward to spending a fantastic hour with you, answering your questions. We've got questions from the 52 Qs community, and we're going to be taking your questions live as well. So far, we've got Thomas, Pete, Jake, Dex, Linda. Les was hanging out with us a little bit earlier. We got Dell also hanging out in the chat. What is good, everybody? It is so good to be with you. Hey, if you enjoy what we do here at 52 Qs, why don't you give this video a thumbs up? Or if you're listening on the podcast app, go ahead and enter a 5-star review for me. It really does help folks just like you find me. And again, as I mention every week, this episode, this entire channel will not be possible without the incredible support of our member subscribers at 52 Qs who give their real life money to help keep all of this afloat. And so in addition to being members of the community, they also get extra features like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, hours and hours and hours of archives, and the opportunities to submit their cues to real music libraries. So hey, if you're feeling stuck and maybe you're ready to take your career to the next level and you want to really push into sync music, then head over to 52qs.com and join us. It is free to join, and membership plans start at just $4 a month. So it is so good. Like I said, it is so good to be with you today. We're going to have a fantastic time. So let's go ahead and jump in. Good to see Jens. Good to see Yuka. Oh, you are some of my favorite people. It is so good to have everybody with us. Dex is over in London staying up late, but no band playing in the background. Yeah, Dex is an alumnus of our mastermind program. And I want to say on the front end, our January mastermind is very close to being sold out, to the point where if there is interest in having more, because usually we cap out at 6, maybe 7, but usually we cap out at 6. But if there is interest, I am totally open to opening up a second section, possibly afternoon section for folks in the US, and a morning section for folks over in the UK, or even further beyond GST. So if you are interested, head over to 52qs.com/mastermind. That cranks up the second week of January, and really looking forward to all of that. But I think I'll have to check with Mrs. 52Qs. I'm not sure if she's in the chat yet, but at last I looked, we might only have one seat available, and we just opened the doors on Tuesday for that. So like I said, if that's something that you are interested in, then head over to 52qs.com/mastermind and register. We do have payment plans and all of that. It's a 12-week program. Would love to have you, covering everything from project management, task management, to pitching to libraries, to motivation, sustainable creativity. We have a lot of folks who are members of the community, who are alumni of the Mastermind program, and it is really good thing. All right, so I want to jump right in with our questions. We've got questions from, like I said, from all over the community, and we're going to go ahead and start with Dell. I know Dell is here, and Dell says, asks, what is the best approach for adding edit points to tracks? Crossfading within the structure of the track itself, or adding a bar between sections? That's a fantastic question. And let's keep in mind what edit points are for. They're there to help give pauses and breaks for editors to cut, add dialogue. If it's a dramedy cue, add punchlines. And good edit points are like the Great Wall of China. They are visible from space. And so if I pull up, this is just my SoundCloud page here, and you can actually see the edit point. So this is a cue called Pounce de Lion, which is an African action cue. that we did during one of the live streams over at 52Qs. So coming up to this edit point. Right, so that is an edit point. So we come back out of it. Another edit point, this is a cue called Sneak Charmer. A little dramedy cue. Now, for me, those were two different types of edit points. They were both kind of cliffhangery edit points, but one kind of lands onto the downbeat, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, stop, and a pause, and that pause can be on tonic, or it can be on, the 5 chord or something like that, creating kind of a cliffhanger moment. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, downbeat. Let me back that up a little bit more for you so you can kind of see it. Pause, let the audio tails fade naturally, but don't artificially dive them down, and you don't need to go to absolute 0. Whereas Snake Charmer happens a little bit. 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and it creates that little pause, and then things kind of sneak back in. And a good editor can go in and chop that and create lots of space. So that is how I do edit points. As far as crossfading, I don't always add a bar. It's not an always thing. And the reason is because some tempos don't require it, some audio tails don't require it. I kind of have it breathe a little bit. Let's look at another one. Like I said, good edit points are visible from space. Here's another edit point. This is a cue called Taika on Me. It's a Japanese percussion cue. Right, so that one wasn't a full beat. Let's see if we can find any. Here's some more edit points. Dramedy cues have tons of little edit points all throughout. Let me fast forward a little bit. Right, so that was just a beat right there. So that's how I think about edit points, and I hope that makes sense. Del, I know you're in the chat. And if you have any follow-ups, please let me know. But that's how I think about edit points, either on the downbeat or on the off on the and sections. So excellent. Also, editors don't always call them edit points. We learned from one of the workshops we did with one of our editors, Josh Siegel. They call them stop downs. Stop downs. Where a little break in the action and then things come back. And then Dell's follow-up question, to quantize or not to quantize? That is the question. Here is my rule of thumb for quantizing. If it is an instrument that it would be played by a human with their hands or face, then we have a little bit of wiggle room where we can not quantize, but it is a super fine line between something that sounds quantized and something that sounds sounds unquantized and something that sounds organic. Let me say that again. There's a fine line between something that sounds organic and something that sounds kind of sloppy and has an error. Now, when we're dealing with MIDI instruments, I have a keyboard here, I have a keyboard down here. There are myriad things that can interrupt the performance. And I don't mean you can put your hands on the instrument, but you might have, you might have CPU spikes because some Dropbox decided to suddenly start syncing. You might get an email. You might have a fat finger moment. It could be weird latency. There are so many things that can affect a MIDI performance that is beyond your control. Introducing latency into the signal. You add one plugin and it adds a ton of latency. So because of that, I feel like I can't always trust my own MIDI performances. So I always hard quantize and then ease the strength of those quantizing. I will, if I'm doing like layered strings, I won't just hard copy and paste those. I'll actually perform them for the most part. I'll perform them multiple times so that each layer has its own quantization variables. And so I'll hard quantize, lock everything to the grid, and then ease the quantization by about 15 to 25%. And if I'm doing layered strings, by not copying pasting those layers, then strings A is going to have a different quantization than strings B, even though they're both 75% quantized. That makes sense. So I hard quantize and then relax. Things that are synth based, things that have pulses, delays, those are absolutely locked onto the grid. Because if you don't, then things that aren't quantized will be magnified as the pulse continues on. And that's if you got multiple pulses and multiple things happening, then that creates a world of hurt down the line. So yeah, definitely hard quantize. But thank you so much for those questions. And thanks for getting us off to a great start. Following up with Michael Reschke. I know Michael and Yuka are longtime supporters. I think they are like OG Facebook folks. And I see that Yuka is with a Yuka is from Japan. Reed is American, but lives in Japan. And so, I know it's early in the morning for Reed. I think it's like 5 or 6 in the morning. And so hello, all you folks on the other side of the planet. Let us know how tomorrow morning looks and if we should bring an umbrella. Anyway, Michael asks, I have a question. I was wondering what my approach is for getting to know your sound libraries or plugins. Do you just dive in and try to break it, making mistakes, or using YouTube? If you have another approach, that would be great too. Libraries and plugins have so many layers to them. It seems a daunting task to learn and to use them. Man, brother, that is the God's honest truth. And one of the downsides of like we just got out of Black Friday, every plugin manufacturer is having sales and everything, and it is so easy to kind of get into the brain of gotta vacuum up all of these plugins, gotta get everything, and we can really fall prey to gear acquisition syndrome, but for plugins. So if you bought anything over Black Friday, then I just take some time. And that's the thing. Don't just keep buying. If you're missing something in your library, that's one thing. But if you're buying something just because it's new and fancy and shiny, if you don't really need it, then I would recommend not buying it. Like I did not buy Diva by Yuhi, even though I saw it was on sale and I wanted it and I've wanted it for a long time. It might be one of those things like Omnisphere where I finally buy it and wonder why in the world it took me so long to buy it, but that remains to be seen. But to your question, my approach to learning new sound libraries is I try to carve out some time and just audition patches. I find I personally have a hard time watching YouTube videos for long, like 45-minute YouTube videos where they're just going patch after patch after patch. And you all know I love the Unfinished and everything that he does. And he gives exhaustive patch demos where he's just like, this is this patch and this is this patch. And I got to be honest. Like I said, I love Matt and I like own nearly all of his patches, but I've never watched one of those videos in their entirety because I just can't. So getting in there, putting your hands on the instrument and just playing around. If you find something that inspires you, then just start writing. Then just start writing. But you just have to spend time with it. It's like learning a new instrument. It's like if you get a new saxophone and you got to break it in. You just have to know where all the edges of that map is. I think the biggest thing keeping us from learning our libraries, me included, is buying too many new libraries. Buying new libraries instead of learning the libraries we have. So yeah, just spend some time. There's nothing that beats just putting your hands on an instrument, playing around. If you are so inclined, you can start cataloging them. You can, I have Logic pulled up here, and you can actually, let me get that face out of the way. You can start making patches and putting them here in your in your patch library. You can create a spreadsheet, whatever is helpful for you, you can do that. I don't personally do that, but I've seen lots of folks do that. All right, so I hope that question helped for you, or hope that answer helped. Nathan asks, once you get an album signed to a library, is it common practice for the composer to upload it to a streaming service like Spotify and SoundCloud? I realized it would depend on the library, but was wondering what your experience has been. My experience is that because nearly every one of my libraries is exclusive, that means that the library owners have assumed the copyrights. So I will still get my royalties, but what I don't have is control over where those go, and it's really up to them. It's up to them if they want to release it on Spotify. Now, I have seen this trend change really over the last 5 years. It used to be that Spotify, nobody really cared. Nobody was because at the end of the day, who's really going to listen to it? But it does become a point of brand and marketing awareness for the libraries themselves. Like if a library is pitching to a client, if they can point to Spotify and look at all of our releases, yes, they could go onto their source audio file or source audio account and all of that. They could do all of that. But if they can point to Spotify and start posting about it on Instagram and LinkedIn, it creates this kind of dare I say legitimacy? I don't know if that's the right word. But there's a reason that like Extreme Music puts their music out on Spotify. That's Hans Zimmer's crew and the Remote Control Studios guys. They don't need to put their stuff out on Spotify. These big trailer companies put their music out on Spotify because it creates market awareness for their company. But at the end of the day, it's not up to you, the composer. It is up to the library. So you would not, as the composer, if you have signed an exclusive deal and they are maintaining the copyright, you would actually be in breach of that copyright if you try to put it out on Spotify yourself. This is why so many of the taxi listings insist that your cues have not been put up to the DSPs, right? The digital service providers. Now, or is it digital streaming platforms? I don't know. Jury is out on that. But as far as SoundCloud, my personal philosophy is I upload into SoundCloud as private links. And so you will see like this guy is private. These are private. These are all cues that I've written. And I use them as private links really as a way for me to track my own plays. I use Spotify to listen to my playlist and to new cues in the car and in my AirPods and all of that stuff. I realized that I said Spotify, I meant SoundCloud. I realized that SoundCloud doesn't have the greatest quality. It's like 128-bit MP3 or 128K MP3. However, if it sounds good on SoundCloud, then chances are it's going to sound pretty darn good elsewhere. And so I keep things private until they make air. Now, once they make air, they've shown up on my cue sheets or on Tunesat or whatever, then I will make it public. And then I will usually add an as heard on whatever, right? But this is, I have this arrangement with my publisher and they're okay with it. At the end of the day, they get to call the shots. So if they're cool with it, then cool, then go with it. Otherwise, you're kind of at their at their discretion. And I'm coming back to Simon's question, but Jens had a follow-up question to Nathan's. Wouldn't both the publishing library and the composers equally benefit from uploading a production music album to streaming services like Spotify? I especially think about production music cues, which have a more storytelling, film score, or song-like structure, as they may fit quite well to the audience of streaming services at the same time. For instance, our recent quirky Christmas albums with 52 cues. That's a really good point. But at the end of the day, publishers are in the business of publishing music for TV placement, and streaming services are a not even a second or tertiary, they're a quadrary thought. It's way down the bottom. Now, the cool news is I think streaming services, or not streaming services, catalog services have gotten hip to this. So Source Audio, which is one of the largest players in the catalog management system, Source Audio has now is now starting to offer DSP services. Source Audio's like biggest client is music libraries, and they recognize that music libraries are starting to put their things out on Spotify. And so, 5-10 years ago, you had to partner up with CD Baby or TuneCore or whatever, and it was kind of a pain. But then we have folks like DistroKid, and even like SoundCloud offers DSP services. And so SongTrader also offers DSP services. And so Source Audio recognizes that this is a part of the market that they should take advantage of. And so they are. And I think the writing is on the wall. But at the end of the day, it's still up to the publisher. It is mutually beneficial, but you're not going to get rich off of it. I mean, streaming royalties are terrible. They're absolutely terrible. They're even worse than like international cable, which can be, pennies, which it all adds up. But Spotify and getting folks to stream your music, the value isn't in the streams themselves as much as it is the market and brand recognition. Okay, Dex mentioned going back to round robins. If you have round robins in the instrument, often quantize work as well, but I often drop back by 1 or 2 milliseconds if it seems like. That's a fantastic point regarding quantization when you're dealing with especially strings and wind instruments, which can have a pretty slow attack envelope. You have to anticipate that change and nudge them forward. So you have to kind of forensically, place them. But that's something to keep in mind. Really good point. And Dex also follows up and says, if you are starting out buying libraries, I would go for a decent string libraries, as they can often be the most telling MIDI sounds, but most universally used in multiple genres. Yep. Oh, really good to see Jeff, man. What is up? Hope you're doing well. Jeff has a question. Since many of us mix in cans, meaning headphones, what is my preference and why? Open, semi-open, or closed? Well, you all know that I've done a video on my my Desert Island headphones, which are these guys right here. These are the Sony MDR 7506s. I'll get those nice and close to the camera so that you can freeze frame if you want to pick those up. And I used these religiously for a decade, longer than that. I love these. They are closed back, but being closed back and being Sony's, they're not without their challenges, meaning the lows are really exaggerated and the highs are really exaggerated. But I've learned to mix in them. But it wasn't until earlier this year when Sony released the MDR MV1s, which are really the open back versions of these. Now, I know they don't look quite the same. These are super light. They're made of super thin aluminum, and they are open back. And what I have discovered, whenever I was mixing in the 7506s, I would run Sound ID Reference, which is a plugin which can offset the which can offset the frequency bias of any number of headphones. It's super cool plugin. So I always ran with that. But I noticed that when I changed to these headphones, they sounded like the 7506s with the plugin turned on, but I didn't have any plugins. So while it's not a totally flat response, I have found that this has given me a much flatter response. And so the only thing I don't do in these headphones these days is tracking. Because they're open back, you will get sound bleeding out of the earpiece and into any microphone you're recording. So I'm really a fan of these. Some folks swear by the Sennheiser, is it the 650s? Some folks swear by those. I'm a Sony guy, and I like the fact that like these headphones have a replaceable cord, velour earpieces. This is, it feels like plastic, but it's actually aluminum. They're really light. I have bigger ears, and so they're nice big cups, and they're super comfy. It was an adjustment, It was an adjustment going from those Sonys to these Sonys and going from closed back to open back. I had tried open back before. I picked up the Bear Dynamics 770s and I hated them. Absolutely. I still have them. They are my, in case of emergency, pull out. If I need headphones to throw in a backpack because I'm going somewhere and I just need headphones, I'll throw those in. But I really did not like those. And because I knew I wanted open back. I like being able to kind of hear the room, hearing my voice in the room through my headphones. That was a real adjustment. But I really love these MDR 7501s. They weren't cheap. But I was able to pick them up, and I'm really, really happy I did. Yeah, Dex loves his 990s. They're open back. Yeah, the sevens. Okay, I got the 990s, not the 77s are the 770s are the closed ones. The 990s are the open ones. Those are the ones that I had, and I did not like those. At the end of the day, though, I will say those 990s were the most comfortable headphones I've ever. They're these big circles, and they're like. They were the most comfortable headphones I've ever owned, but I just didn't like the sound. At the end of the day, it really, I mean, you could mix and master in AirPods. You could mix and master in Beats. Don't let anybody tell you can't, because at the end of the day, knocking things over in my desk, at the end of the day, it's about learning your headphones. Learning what a good mix sounds like in your headphones and what a bad mix does. You can overcome it. And I'll argue with anybody who insists that only the real musicians and real producers mix in the room. But there are so many variables: the quality of your speakers, the quality of your room treatment, the math that goes into your placements. Not to mention, the shape of your room. There's so many variables that headphones, quite frankly, eliminate. But they do bring their own challenges that you just have to overcome. So yeah. Jeff likes the 880s, the semi-open, but thinking about trying something else. I would go to the 990s. If you like the 880s, I would stay in the Bear Dynamics, because you just like Sonys are Sonys are Sonys. Sennheisers are Sennheisers are Sennheisers. And this is my personal belief, if you stay in the family, I think you'll have less of an adjustment. I was going from Sony 7506 closed back studio headphones to Bear Dynamic 990 open backs. And it was a bridge too far. I could not leap that Rubicon. But yes, excellent question. Thank you so much, Jeff. Really, really do appreciate that. Simon asks a question. I hear lots of names assigned to different cues in production music, tension, dramedy, trailer, but not a huge amount of resources listing them all or talking about what makes them what they are and not something else. The best specific resource I found and what prompted this question was listening to the interview with Rob Astor and hearing about all the specific sports cues that are required in that market. Is there anything you can point to which could help someone new in the production music field or someone branching out into different styles? I found taxi listings a little unhelpful for this, although the reference tracks are great because you can only see the cues for what's being requested. My recommendation would be to go to some libraries. Go to some libraries. So one of my favorites is Atomica Music. I love Atomica Music, and you can go into tracks. Let's go into albums, or let's not go into albums. Let's go into tracks, and here you can sort by. Let me zoom in. You can sort by genre. You can sort by mood. You can sort by libraries. So if you want to know like what hopeful, determined hip hop track sounds like. Oh, I lost it. There we go. Hip hop. There are a handful for you to try. I'm not going to click on any of them, otherwise we'll get demonetized. But by the way, speaking of, remember earlier I said you could see good edit points from space. Look at that. Look at those nice chunky edit points. You can see them right there. Yep, that's a healthy looking waveform. And so going to, I like Atomica Music for this. I also like, is it the Supervisor? The supervisor.com. And in this, you can search for by genre. And this is Scorekeepers. You can search by mood, by energy, and you can also by scenes, right? So if you want to know like what drama cues look like, and here are different types of scenes that you can search through. Tender moments, unresolved ending. And so my only recommendation would be to spend some time in a library. There isn't necessarily a repository of definitions, although this is something that 52Qs is looking to help. This is what part of the almanac is about, is putting these things together and helping to educate folks just like you. And so that would be my recommendation. And the two that I lean on a lot are Atomica Music, which is atomicamusic.com. I like thesupervisor.com. And if you really want to swing for the fences here and go to the top of the deck, extrememusic.com. This is the Hans Zimmer folks and Remote Control Studios. And let me see if we click on search, and you can instrument, genre, label. So you could type trailer. Let's do romantic trailer. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Yep. So these are all tracks that line up. So it's a little bit of kind of reverse engineering, but the albums are also super helpful. Like if you go over to Atomica Music, and instead of clicking on tracks, click on albums. And then you can see, okay, so here is Lucky Day Pop, Modern Elegance, Heartening Moments, Cinematic, Ambient Piano, Deep Investigation, Lo-Fi, Pizzicato. And so, yeah, Under Suspicion. Yep. Spend some time on the libraries, and that will, I think, get you pointed in the right direction. But really, really appreciate that question. And finally, we have another question from Ilya. Ilya says, I can't attend, but what is the difference between having publisher shares versus writer's shares? Do they pay differently? And does having one or the other make a big difference in the long run? Well, royalties from the PROs are split up into two halves. So the royalties come in, and half of the royalty goes to the writer and half of the royalty goes to the publisher. And often sync fees and sync license fees that we get, from placements are also split 50-50 as well. And so the system is just set up that way. It's just set up that way to split the royalties, and they generally pay 50-50. But the publishing is usually taken by the publisher, by the catalog, by the library. I mean, truth be told, there's nothing stopping you from being your own publisher. You can sign up with a BMI to be your publisher, but just know that you're the one doing all the legwork, and you're the one finding homes for your music, making relationships with music supervisors, and all of that. And so it's just two halves to the business partnership. This is why I like to think that having a publisher is not having like an agent. Publishers aren't your agent; they are they're your partners in this. And so that's how those are split up. Now, publishing shares and writer shares can be split up multiple ways. You can have multiple writers, you can have multiple publishers, but it's really up to the publisher to determine how that gets all kind of split up. And they generally, to your second half of your question, do they pay differently? Not necessarily. To the PRO, it's just pointing the money elsewhere. But Ilya, I hope that helped for you. And in my experience, most publishers start out as composers, right? And then they just work their way towards being a publisher as their relationships grow and as they make new relationships, right? And they start networking. They can find homes for your music, or kind of like what we're doing in 52Qs and with the family plan. And part of, we mentioned how our family subscribers have the opportunity to pitch to real libraries. Well, that's what that's about. That's what the briefing room is about. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up for you so you guys can see it. Right now, like I said, we have a feature called the briefing room, and the briefing room is real briefs from real libraries. And so these are libraries that I have a relationship with, some of whom I am functioning as, a co-publisher. So for example, we have this Spanish guitar documentary, or we have a golf documentary, and the publisher asked for Spanish guitar cues. And so put the brief out, and some folks submitted to it, and I'm sending those up to the library tomorrow morning. We just finished collecting cues for the PGA on CBS through my CBS publisher, and we are now working deliverables for that. And so we put briefs up all the time, and here are some of the past briefs that we've had. And so this is a feature. I'm not here to sell you on it, but this is me, like literally transitioning from being a composer and then realizing, wow, I have these relationships with these libraries and I can't write all the music. And so bringing folks along. And so these opportunities are me functioning much like a publisher. And it's just a natural extension of a career. You start writing and you write for 10 years or so, you're going to have relationships with folks, and they're going to say, "Hey man, do you have this?" Like, I don't play Spanish guitar, but I know some amazing folks who do. And so I connect them. Yep, for sure. Let's see. Mike asked, a while back, I wrote a theme for my wife's YouTube show that got quite popular. I didn't get any money for it, but in the future, how would one monetize a theme song? A theme song on YouTube, my recommendation would be to release it on the DSPs, the digital streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, and all of that. Then register it with Content ID, which means that every time the theme song plays, you would get royalties for that, or you would get the royalties or partial royalties from the performance, from the ad revenue that comes from that video. Otherwise, if you're looking to land it with a publisher, then you need to contact them, maybe get it signed to a library, or if you think it can hold its own, then maybe you could pitch it to a sync agent. Now, sync agents often deal with vocal music, and so if it's not a vocal up track, which is what those are called, like a vocal up, then they might not necessarily want your cue. But the first thing I would do is run it through Content ID, and you could go ahead and run that theme song now, because back episodes, it won't count for back plays, but if those old episodes are still getting played, then they can start generating new revenue for you, for sure. All right. Answered Jeff's question as well. Ms. Juju Beats, what is happening? It is so good to have you with us today. Pete asks, I have about 90 airings across 4 TV shows from 18 tracks placed this year. I feel this is a promising start, but have nothing to compare to, and was just wondering your thoughts given your experience. My thought is that 90 placements on 18 tracks is killer. That's a killer ratio. Absolutely killer ratio. You said this is kind of your first year? Generally, about 5 years. I would count on about 5 years for the ball to really get rolling. It can take 2 years for a cue from I have an idea for a cue to getting paid. That can take up to 2 years. Like, you can have an idea for a cue, and let's say it takes a month to write, and get revisions, and then you get it pitched, and then they take it, and so then it gets absorbed into their catalog. That might take 3 to 6 months, and then it might take 3 to 6 months to get it like the artwork and everything, get it published. So you might be a year in, and then it gets pitched, and then it gets placed, and by the time it might take another 3 to 6 months to get placed in the show, and then it might take another 6 to 12 months for that cue sheet to show up in your statement. So it just takes a lot of time. It takes a ton of patience. And I tell you, the toughest part, friends, is about year 2 and 3. Because you'll start to see some trickle, which is super exciting. You get your first placement and you're like, yes, and you'll have that slow motion moment. And you'll probably, if you're like me, you'll probably remember where you were when you hear your music on TV for the first time. It's super exciting. And then you'll get super high on that, right? But then it'll take a while for more placements to come through. And that lull in year 2 and 3 takes a lot of patience, man. You just got to keep with it. Got to keep with it. And then so you'll get it's a slow arc, right? But year 2 and 3 is when you're like, this isn't going anywhere. I hate my life. This sucks. I'm going to give it up. I should be making tons more money by now. It just takes time. It just takes time. You're very welcome, Pete. Appreciate you. Dex says, my first accepted queue was in 2017. It took 3 years to turn up as a royalty payment in 2020. Best day of your life. Dex wants to know what flavor of coffee. Yes, it is coffee. Oh, the mastermind folks know better. Yes, it is coffee. It is a 2023 Christmas blend. I'm a big fan of Starbucks Christmas blend, which is like aged Sumatra. And I bought a ton. I usually buy, like, you go back through my Instagram, you can find like 18 pounds of coffee. And just a few weeks ago, I finally finished it off and then bought the 2023 blend. And it's really amazing how much better fresh coffee is versus 2-year-old coffee. If I wasn't drinking this, then based off of Enrico Caporale's suggestion, Lavazza coffee. I'm a big fan of Lavazza as well. Big fan. Pete asks, is it okay to ask for placement information from your publisher up front of your next BMI statement, assuming that they have the cue sheets? I would wait, because what you don't want to seem is like, hey, you got my queue, right? Is it placed yet? Is it placed yet? If it's been like 6 to 9 months and you're just curious, then you could ask, but I would give it no less than 6 months before you really start asking. The other thing is, if you got placed and you caught it on your Tunesat, or maybe even caught it live, or it has shown up on your queue sheet, and it's not showing up on your queue sheet, then that's a call right away to your publisher, just to make sure. And I would recommend loading up Tunesat. The free version allows you to load up 50 tracks, right? And so let me do that. Allows you to load up 50 tracks, and I load up 50 tracks, and it's great. Like I said, it's free, and it's also a really good way to kind of to pad out your IMDB. Is finding things that show up on Tunesat. I'm trying to log into Tunesat here in real time. Let's see if it will wake up. I will say Tunesat's website is criminally slow. Come on, Tunesat. It's really, really slow. I can't, and to be honest, it's kind of a miracle that Tunesat even works. The idea that it's recording all TV all the time, all over the world. That seems like that shouldn't really be a thing. But it is. And so I was trying to show you, but Tunesat's being really slow, like literally. Like it's just, so I can't really show you. Mike asks, for people who make a living, is there an average number of tracks released before you can burn the bridge of your day job? Man, in one way, like I'll let you know. I'll let you know when that happens. But the rule of thumb that I've been working towards is 1,000 tracks. But like Dex just said, I wouldn't necessarily give up your day job. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, if I'm being honest, I've had royalty checks as big as $23,000, but I've also had royalty checks as low as 41 cents and everything in between. And it is not for the faint of heart. Especially as trends change, you have queues which get a ton of love for like 2 years and then suddenly fall off, and you have zero control over it. By the way, it looks like Tunesat finally decided to show up. And so here's my Tunesat. I registered just a handful of tracks, and it's great seeing all these placements across the world. And I do use these. I'm gonna see if there's anything new. If there's anything new that I can add. Laskin, I've added these already. Hello Heston, Alarm in Alberta. This is a show called Alarm in Alberta. Bell Collective, Still a Mystery. Ooh, I wonder if I've added that. Let me, I'm going to go to my IMDb here. And this is what I do. So here's a show called Still a Mystery. And the episode's called A Community Betrayal. So there's the show, Still a Mystery. I don't know if I've added this to my IMDb. This is a lot of how I use Tunesat. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to find the episode. Click on episodes. Let me go back to here. What was the episode called? A Community Betrayal. Let's find A Community Betrayal. The other thing is that they're not always all in here. So you're kind of at their whim. All right. Oh, there it is right there. All right. So I'm going to go here and I am going to go edit the page and I am going to go here into the music department, add one credit. I don't think I've added this to my IMDb. Okay. I will search for me. There I am right there. And I'm not the composer for IMDb. I didn't write the theme music. I'm not the music supervisor. We are additional music. And unfortunately here on IMDb, there's not a category for additional music. Don't put composer. That would be like I did the score, but instead I use other and then composer, additional music. Check these updates and boop. Okay. It's yellow because I've already entered this. So I've already entered this. So I don't need to add those, but that is what, this is what I use Tunesat a lot for, to help my IMDb page. And so if we look up my IMDb, you can see all those credits, which is really cool. Looks great. Of course, I do a ton NFL on CBS. I do a lot with Temptation Island, and that's when you see like 95 episodes since 2015, 42 episodes of the NFL Today, and a lot of PGA placements as well. Those are probably closer to the bottom. 32 placements of golf and all. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to do. but yeah, there we go. Yes, Dex, you don't want to rely on quarterly payment to pay all your bills. That would scare the Paddington out of me. Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I still am at, I've got my official branded Full Sail mug here. Part of the reason I'm still at Full Sail, yes, I love to teach, but also I get benefits, and it is a day job. I'm just super thankful that it dovetails pretty seamlessly with what I do professionally. I imagine if it wasn't something like Full Sail, I would be burning the candle on both ends to try to find my way to where I wouldn't have to. Jeff asks, how many placements should you have before you start an IMDb page? That's a good question. Brother, I would say one. You've got to start with one. As long as it's one that already is out there and exists, right? Because you can like write your own IMDb entries. Like some of these I added myself. I think like this Major Champions Invitational I added, some of these Masters tournaments, but it's kind of a pain. I'm not going to lie. It's a real pain in the butt. So I don't bother adding. If the show isn't there, I don't mess with that anymore. For example, and I'll pull up my SESAC. So I can show you a SESAC cue sheet. I mean, I'm not going to show you all the nitty gritty here, but I can show you a cue sheet at least. All right, so here in SESAC, like that, I don't think that Masters tournament is in. These basketball tournaments might not always be in. Boomer and Geo, this is a show that I've gotten a ton of placements on. Like you can see Boomer and Geo, but none of these are in IMDb. So I could add them if I wanted to, but I don't really feel like messing with it because it is kind of a pain in the butt to futz with all of that. So I tend not to. But Jeff, man, if you got one, go for it. If it's one that already exists, like you've gotten some NFL placements, I believe, right? And so if you can find those episodes of the NFL on CBS, so if we go like the NFL on CBS, and we got 65 years. So let's do 2023. And often they will all be here. So here are, so this is into the playoffs of last season. And that's last season. And so this season starts right here. Yep. Yeah. I think if the cards already exist over on IMDB, then I would add it. And then I would put that IMDB logo on my website because it's a credit. It's absolutely a credit, and it is your credit. And no matter, like, if you never get placements ever again, that placement can never be taken away from you, and that is yours. Dex asks, are you a composer with SESAC, but a new composer that isn't an option? That is correct. SESAC is an invite only. And generally, I mean, it's relatively a small organization compared to ASCAP and BMI. It's a very small organization, but it is invite only. And generally they work with folks who have placements. And so I started out on ASCAP. I loved ASCAP, had a really good time with them, fantastic resources. Their website is great. They have some of the best cue sheets in the business. They're super fast. Their website's fantastic. But I got invited to join SESAC. It was just better for me as far as the type of placements I was getting. Because in general, these are broad generalizations, right? In the US, ASCAP is going to give you more payout for the type of placement. So if you get a theme music, then you're going to get a better payout for ASCAP. If you get high rated, like if you get placements in a bunch of high ratings, like eyeballs, Nielsen ratings, then BMI is probably going to pay out more, right? Because it's, television and everything. Whereas SESAC in general puts more of an emphasis on length of play. And so I wasn't getting a ton of high rated placements, but what I was getting, so I was getting really long placements, or rather I was getting a lot of placements on golf, like the Waste Management Open on like a random Saturday in June, right? And so I switched over to SESAC and have been really, really happy there. I do miss some of the bells and whistles that ASCAP has, but on the other hand, like I have a personal rep that I can call up, and it's really nice kind of not feeling like a number. And I understand that that's just how it is. That's how it is over in ASCAP, because it needs to be, and that's fine. I totally get it. It's totally fine. All right. Any other questions? Got a couple more minutes left here. Got a couple of more minutes. I'm going to see if any questions came in over here at 52Qs. Yeah, Dex, PRS was the obvious choice, but you went for BMI. As I was advised, a lot of placements would probably be in the US. Yeah, if you're getting TV placements, then I think BMI is the right choice. Now, there is a question right now. Saw a question come through one of the YouTube chats about it was a topic suggestion. BMI going for profit and being bought by a I'm going to misspeak. Right, I don't know the finances, but equity firm, I think, is what it is, and that's admittedly that's a little scary, right? It's a little scary because generally no happy corporate ending started with the phrase, and then our company was bought by an equity firm. In general, no happy ending started that way at the start of the book. But I will say that there are a lot of people in BMI, and it being private, I don't think is the death knell that some folks think it is. Mainly because, I mean, SESAC is private. It's for profit. It is private. It is not necessarily beholden to Congress or anything like that. And so that means that they can move a lot more faster. They can react to market changes and that kind of thing. The equity firm is a little scary, but that's really all I know about it. And I do have a lot of friends in BMI. If I wasn't with SESAC, I would be with BMI. Dex says, AI is a bit scary too, but let's go there. I personally think we just need to get on with the job of composing. Thoughts? AI is like it's the boogeyman, right? It's the next thing that's going to scare everybody. It's going to take our jobs and all of that. And I think it's overblown. I don't think we need to be ignorant of it. But I mean, you could go back. I mentioned this before. I think John Philip Sousa like hated the player piano because it was like taking our jobs. And you can either adapt to it, embrace it, and absorb it into your own workflow, or you can resist it and then get left behind. And it's not going away. It's not going away. And so resisting it, I think, is futile. And so we just need to see where the edges of the map are and figure out how we can use it, how we can use it responsibly, and find the things that it can't and probably won't ever do well, and do those things well. Right? Like writing emotion. I think AI is coming for that low-hanging kind of corporate-y, kind of bland music. I think it's coming for that. Much the same way that it came for bland corporate stock music, stock photos. I was reading a Reddit thread the other day, in a small business Reddit thread, and they were saying, "Hey, I make like clip art, and my business is hemorrhaging because AI." Well, I mean, having a business selling clip art, I mean, it's cool, but that's kind of low-hanging fruit. And if I'm being honest, and let's all be honest with ourselves here, production music is lower hanging fruit than like what John Williams does and what Hans Zimmer does. It's not to diminish production music. It's important. 46% of the film and TV industry utilizes production music. And I don't think when a company like Sony or Netflix or whatever drops $100 million on a show, they're not gonna look for AI. But like Rooms to Go or a local law firm, they're gonna use AI and that kind of thing. Dex says like playing the saxophone, yeah, or like playing. I think playing a live instrument is going to become an increasingly valuable commodity. It's part of the reason, I started learning to play that guy. And it's part of the reason I got in ukulele. It's part of the reason I put shakers on everything, so that I can add a real thing. Instead of buying a $500 sax VST, buy a $500 saxophone and learn to play it. I still submit that a mediocre performance of a real instrument will sound better than the highest VST. Linda says AI can't perform like. Ooh, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Dex, you play sax, all right? Yeah, and it's not going to. But where can AI help us? AI. Well, let me tell you how AI is helping me right now. Last week's podcast episode on Star Trek, I used AI to organize my thoughts. I used AI to create outlines and help me brainstorm ideas. Yep, I use ChatGPT. We use ChatGPT all the time. ChatGPT has shaved off probably about 4 hours of copywriting in our week between me and Shannon. Now, what I don't do is just wholesale copy and paste. Nope. You got to know what you're talking about. And likewise, with music, you've got to know what you're talking about. Yeah, so Yehudi Menuhin, is he I saw a video where a super famous violinist was playing like in the subway and nobody was paying him any attention. It's like I've got a concert in Carnegie Hall later today. And so I just don't think we need to be afraid of it. And I think folks who embrace it don't lean. It's like using loops. Use it as a tool, not as a crutch. Right? Use it to supplement your creativity, not to anchor your creativity. I think you're going to be okay. So we probably have time for one more question. I do need to start wrapping up here today. It's been really great hanging out with you. Thank you so much. Any other final questions? Any other final questions? Really appreciate everybody today. We'll give it another moment or so. And while we wait, I just want to encourage you once again, if you haven't joined us over at 52Qs, we would absolutely love to have you. Like I said, it's free to join. Memberships start at just $4 a month, and that is for our neighbor tier, where you get access to our live streams and our almanacs. Our friend tier gets access to our weekly Q breakdowns. We also do monthly career and industry workshops with extensive archives. They get access to our friend zone chat group. And then we have our family program, which gets their own family chat group as well. They get access to weekly Zoom feedback, actually bi-weekly Zoom feedback sessions. They get access also to our briefing room. And the briefing room is where you are pitching to libraries. And so, yeah, we'd love to have you. Plans, like I said, start at just $4 a month. And our mastermind cranks up here at the beginning of January. We would love to have you as well over there. Just like 1 or 2 seats left. If we have enough, I am totally open to having multiple sections, to having 2 sections. I'd rather have 2 sections of 4 people than 1 section of 7 and then turn like 3 people away. Let's see. Dex asks, favorite Voyager episode? Yeah, blink of an eye. It's the episode I mentioned the other day. Definitely not the one where what is it called? Oh, I'm forgetting the episode. It's where Tom Paris goes like past warp 10 and he evolves faster than everybody. And then he turns into a salamander, and then he kidnaps Janeway and they go to a planet and they have salamander babies. So Tom Paris, for the record, Tom Paris and Catherine Janeway have salamander babies that they left on the planet. And the one with 8472, yeah, that was a really scary villain, super scary villain. And is that your? Are you brand new to Voyager? Are you brand new to Voyager? Yeah, Blink of an Eye is the one I mentioned last week on the episode. It is so freaking good. My favorite episode, and also stars a very young Daniel Day Kim. A very young Daniel Day Kim, who went on to be in Lost and Hawaii Five-0 and everything. Okay, so you know about fluidic space and all that stuff. Yep. Anyway, that is going to do it for us today. Thank you so much. Oh, it is always so good to hang out with you. Love doing these live. We are going to be doing a live Q&A at least once every few months. And so be on the lookout for those. And once again, a huge word of thanks to our family, friends, and neighbor subscribers. As a reminder, we are shutting down our Patreon at the end of the year. So if you're watching the live streams and you want access to those, then you're going to need to join us over in the neighbor group. But it is always so good. Thank you so much. Just know that I love and appreciate all of you. Next week, we are rolling our interview with Jameson Nathan Jones, who is a composer, a YouTuber, and a free thinker. And he also, much like Anne Catherine Dern, says the quiet parts out loud. So you don't want to miss that. That is coming up next week, but that is going to do it for me. As always, a huge word of thanks. Until next time, peace. The 52Qs podcast is copyright 2023 at 18 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52qs.com.